The Greyhound bus rolled into Dallas, Texas, just after sunset. The sky was bruised purple, streaked with red, as if warning her of what was to come. Emily Carter, 23, pressed her forehead against the window and tried to calm the nervous rhythm of her heart. She had been texting with Daniel Brooks, her boyfriend of 3 months, all through the ride. His messages were short, a little colder than usual, but she chalked it up to nerves. After all, this was the first time they would meet in person. Emily stepped off the bus, clutching her small suitcase. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and fried food from a nearby food truck. She scanned the parking lot until she spotted him, a tall figure leaning against a black Chevy. His baseball cap shadowed his face, but his eyes caught hers, piercing and unblinking. He didn't wave, didn't smile. "Just watched, Emily," he said. His voice was lower than she imagined, gravelly. "You must be Daniel," she replied, forcing a smile. He gave a curt nod. "Let's get you out of here. Long ride, huh?" Inside the truck, silence pressed heavy between them. The city lights blurred past as Daniel drove toward the outskirts, where neon gave way to shadows and endless Texas backroads. Emily fidgeted, trying to break the tension. "So, this is finally happening," she said, voice light. "Yeah." His tone was flat, unreadable. She studied him in the dim glow of the dashboard. He looked older than his photos, with sharper lines in his jaw and eyes that seemed too restless, darting from the road to the mirrors and back. She brushed it off, telling herself he was nervous too. They reached a small, isolated house sitting on acres of land. No neighbors in sight. A single porch light flickered against the dark. "Home sweet home," Daniel muttered. Unlocking the door inside, the place smelled of stale smoke and dust. The living room was cluttered with old furniture, papers, and beer bottles. Emily's stomach knotted, but she masked it with a polite laugh. "Cozy," she said. He watched her closely. "You'll get used to it." They sat together on the worn couch. He didn't touch her, didn't lean in for a kiss. Instead, he stared at her, as if studying every move. She tried to bridge the gap, telling stories about her trip, about college back home, about her dreams. He barely responded, his jaw tightening with each word. When she excused herself to use the bathroom, she noticed something odd. On the counter, half hidden under a towel, was a bottle of strong prescription medication. The name on the label wasn't Daniel Brooks. It was something else, Jason Harlan. Her pulse quickened. Questions swirled. Was Daniel hiding his real name? Why? She returned to the living room, masking her suspicion with a smile. But inside, she felt the first spark of fear. Daniel's gaze lingered on her like a predator studying prey. "You tired?" he asked softly. "A little," she lied. "Good. Tomorrow's gonna be a big day." His words were laced with something she couldn't decipher, promise or threat. That night, Emily lay awake in the musty guest room, the sound of Daniel's footsteps pacing outside her door. She told herself she was imagining things, but deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. The morning sun bled through the crooked blinds, cutting thin lines of light across the dusty guest room. Emily opened her eyes slowly, her body stiff from the uneasy sleep. The muffled sound of movement came from the kitchen pots, clattering, water running. For a brief moment, she convinced herself it was normal, that she was simply in a new place, with someone she was still getting to know. But the unease from last night hadn't left her. She sat up, her gaze falling on her phone charging by the bed. No messages, no notifications. She scrolled through old conversations with Daniel Sweet. Funny, reassuring words that felt a lifetime away from the man pacing outside her door the night before. She typed out a quick message to her best friend, made it safe. He's different than I thought. We'll call later. She hesitated, then hit send. When she stepped into the kitchen, Daniel or Jason, as the prescription bottle had read, was standing at the stove, frying bacon. He glanced at her with a tight smile. "Sleep, all right?" he asked. "Yeah," she lied. "You," he shrugged. "Didn't sleep much." "Lot on my mind." She forced a laugh. "Like what?" He looked at her for a long beat before answering. "You'll see." The words hung in the air like smoke. Emily sat down at the cluttered table. The food smelled good, but her appetite was gone. She noticed his hands as he worked the faint scars across his knuckles, the nervous twitch of his thumb. He caught her staring. "You don't eat bacon?" he asked, almost accusingly. "I do," she said quickly, reaching for a strip. "Just not hungry yet." The silence stretched again. She searched for something, anything, to ground the moment. "So? I noticed some medicine in the bathroom. Is everything okay?" His head snapped toward her. "You went through my stuff." Her heart thudded. "No, it was on the counter. I was just curious." He studied her with eyes that seemed to pierce through skin and bone. Then, slowly, he smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't worry about that." Emily forced herself to nod, but inside, alarm bells screamed louder. After breakfast, he suggested a drive. The truck rolled down endless back roads, surrounded by fields and scattered woods. Emily watched the horizon, calculating distance, escape routes, anything that might matter later. Daniel finally spoke. "You know, people aren't always who they say they are online." The words made her throat go dry. "Yeah," she said carefully, "that's true." He turned his gaze from the road to her, and she swore she saw something flicker behind his eyes, something dark, unhinged. "Why did you really come here, Emily?" he asked. She forced a smile, her hands twisting in her lap. "To meet you, to see if this was real," he smirked. "Do I look real enough for you?" Her voice wavered. "Yeah, you do." The truck slowed as he pulled into a gas station. Emily's chest lifted with hope. Public, people, safety. But Daniel didn't get out. He just sat there, drumming his fingers against the steering wheel, eyes locked on her. "You ever think about how fast things can change?" he whispered. "Like one wrong word, one wrong move, and everything flips." Emily swallowed hard. She wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I guess that's true," she murmured. Daniel finally got out to pump gas, leaving her inside the truck. Her phone buzzed with a reply from her best friend. "Call me when you can. I'm worried." Emily's hand hovered over the screen. She could dial 911. She could text her location. But then she saw him watching her through the glass, his expression sharp and unreadable. Her fingers froze. By mid-afternoon, the Texas heat pressed down like a weight. The truck hummed along narrow country roads, its tires crunching gravel with every turn. Emily stared out the window, her thoughts spiraling. The small-town landscapes, blurred rusted barns, abandoned motels, fields of dry grass. Every mile pulled her further from safety, and closer into Jason's single quotes S-world. He broke the silence. You're quieter than you were online. Emily forced a chuckle. I guess I'm just tired. New place, new faces. Just one face, he said sharply. His eyes flicked toward her, then back to the road. That's why you're here, isn't it? Me. Her throat tightened. Yeah, of course. The truck slowed as they turned down an even narrower road, lined with oak trees that cast long shadows across the ground. At the end sat a run-down shack with a crooked tin roof. Daniel parked and turned off the engine. Come on, he said. Emily hesitated. Where are we? Place I go when I need to think. The air inside the shack was thick with mildew and rot. Dust motes floated in the shafts of light, cutting through cracked boards. A table stood in the center, scarred and stained. On it lay old photographs, stacks of notebooks, and something that made Emily's stomach drop nerves. At least 6 different sizes, some clean, some not. Daniel noticed her staring. He smirked. Relax. Tools. A man needs tools. She forced a nod, though her skin crawled. Her eyes darted to the photo's grainy images of women taken from a distance, some smiling, unaware of the lens, others blurry, caught in movement. Who are these? She asked, her voice trembling despite her best effort. He leaned closer, his breath hot on her ear. Don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. Her pulse thundered. She backed away, her heel catching on the uneven floorboard. He laughed, low and guttural, enjoying the fear written on her face. Look at you, he said. You're scared already. You barely know me. Emily swallowed hard, trying to summon her strength. I'm not scared, just surprised. Liar. His voice dropped to a whisper. You should be scared. The words clung to her like oil. They left the shack as the sun dipped lower. Emily's mind raced. She had to find a way out. But how? She thought of her friend back home, the unanswered text. She thought of her parents, who believed she was on a simple trip to see her boyfriend. If they knew where she was now, they'd scream at her to run back at the house. Daniel grew oddly affectionate, as though flipping a switch. He sat next to her on the couch, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You're prettier than your pictures, he said softly. She forced a smile, though every nerve screamed at her to recoil. Thanks. He tilted his head. But you're hiding something. I can see it in your eyes. Her heart stumbled. What do you mean? You're judging me, wondering if you made a mistake coming here. His tone hardened. Am I right? Emily's lips parted, but no words came. Silence stretched, sharp and suffocating. Daniel's smile returned, thin and cruel. Don't worry, you'll get used to me. That night, when he finally went to bed, Emily sat in the dark guest room, gripping her phone. No service. The bars were gone. Her chest tightened as she realized he'd driven her so far off the grid. No signal could reach her here, and Daniel had planned it that way. Emily woke to the sound of something heavy slamming against the floor. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then came the unmistakable sound of glass shattering. She sat up, her body stiff, ears straining. The house was silent again, but the silence felt staged, deliberate. She crept to the door and opened it just enough to see down the hall. Daniel was standing in the kitchen, his back to her, shoulders rigid. On the ground lay a broken beer bottle, amber liquid pooling across the tiles. His hands were pressed against the counter, his head bowed. Emily swallowed hard. Maybe now was her chance. She tiptoed back, slipped into the room, and grabbed her suitcase. She stuffed her phone and wallet inside, her fingers trembling. But before she could move, his voice cut through the air. "Where do you think you're going?" Her heart dropped. He was standing in the doorway, eyes wild, lips curled in something between a grin and a snarl. I thought maybe I'd grab some air," she stammered. At 3 in the morning, his laugh was jagged, broken. "You think I don't see through you? You're scared. You're planning to leave." "No," she said quickly. "I just can't sleep." He stepped into the room, his shadow stretching across the floor. "You think you know me, Emily. You don't know a damn thing." She backed up until she hit the wall. "Then tell me, who are you really?" He froze, the question hanging in the stale air. His chest heaved, his jaw clenched. Then, almost too calmly, he whispered, "My name isn't Daniel. It's Jason. Daniel's dead. He's been dead for years." Emily's stomach churned. "What? What do you mean?" Jason's gaze burned into hers. "You met a ghost. A version of me I killed off a long time ago. The man you thought you loved, he never existed." He moved closer, and she caught the bitter stench of alcohol on his breath. "But you're real. And now you're here, in my world. There's no getting out." Her mind screamed run, but her body betrayed her, locked in place. She forced herself to speak. "Jason, I just want to understand. That's all." For a fleeting second, something softened in his face. But then it snapped back, darker, colder. "You'll understand soon enough." He left the room without another word, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Emily's chest heaved, her body shaking uncontrollably. She thought about bolting, but the front door creaked open and shut. He'd gone outside. She peeked through the blinds. Jason was pacing in the yard, talking to himself, gesturing wildly like he was arguing with someone only he could see. The sight froze her blood. Her phone buzzed weakly, 1 bar of service. Her best friend's last message glowed on the screen. "Are you okay?" Emily's thumbs flew over the keys, typing, "No, help, send police." Location, but before she could hit send, the bar vanished, the signal gone. Tears blurred her vision. She pressed the phone to her chest, whispering prayers into the suffocating dark dot outside. Jason stopped pacing. Slowly, he turned toward the house, toward her window. And though the glass separated them, Emily swore he was looking straight at her. Morning brought no relief. Emily sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring at the worn carpet, her thoughts spiraling. Jason had barely spoken since the night before. He moved around the house in silence, the weight of his presence pressing on her like chains. Every creak of the floorboards made her flinch. Finally, he appeared in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. "We're going for a drive," he said flatly. Emily's stomach twisted. "Where?" "You'll see." The truck swallowed them in silence. The radio was off, only the hum of the engine filling the void. Emily kept her eyes on the passing landscape, endless stretches of farmland, abandoned barns, the occasional distant cow. She thought of screaming, of throwing herself from the moving vehicle, but fear kept her paralyzed. After nearly an hour, Jason pulled off the road and onto a narrow dirt trail. The truck jostled violently as it wound deeper into the woods. Branches scraped against the windows like claws. When they finally stopped, they were surrounded by nothing but trees. No houses, No witnesses. Jason cut the engine. He turned to her, his gaze burning. Do you know why I brought you here? Her voice cracked. No, he smiled, slow and cruel. Because this is where I decide if you're worth keeping. Her blood ran cold. What does that mean? He leaned closer. It means I've been lied to before. Tricked girls who think they're better than me. They all pay for it eventually. But you might be different. Or maybe not. Emily's hands shook in her lap. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I'm not lying to you. I came because I wanted to be here. With you. His smile faltered, suspicion clouding his face. Then prove it. He shoved the truck door open and stepped out, motioning for her to follow. The woods were dense, suffocatingly quiet. He led her down a narrow path until they reached a clearing. In the center stood a shallow pit, half dug, the earth freshly turned. A shovel leaned against a tree. Emily froze. What is this? Jason tilted his head, studying her reaction. Insurance. Everyone needs a backup plan. Her legs trembled. The pit gaped like an open mouth, waiting. She forced herself to stay calm, to keep breathing. Panic would only make things worse. Jason stepped closer, his voice low, almost tender. Don't make me use it, Emily. Don't make me. Her throat constricted. You don't have to. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. For a moment, he just stared at her, eyes flickering with something unreadable: doubt, rage, desire. Then, abruptly, he laughed. The sound was jagged, unnerving. You're smarter than the others, he said. They always begged, always cried. You're trying to play me. She swallowed hard. I'm not playing you. His smile widened. Good, because if I ever catch you lying, I'll bury you right here, and no one will ever find you. The words carved themselves into her skull. He turned back toward the truck, leaving her frozen by the pit. For a long second, Emily considered bolting into the trees, but his voice carried back through the woods. Don't even think about it. I'll catch you, she believed him. Back in the truck, Emily's nails dug into her palms. Her only chance now was to think, to plan, to wait for the moment when his guard slipped. But she knew one thing with sickening certainty: time was running out. The drive back from the woods was suffocating. Emily sat rigid, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. Jason hummed under his breath, tapping the steering wheel, almost cheerful. The sound chilled her more than silence ever could. When they returned to the farmhouse, he tossed his cap on the counter and cracked open a beer, chugging half before wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. His mood shifted rapidly, swinging from unnerving calm to simmering volatility. You think I don't notice? He said suddenly, his voice sharp. Emily froze. Notice what? The way you look at me, like you're studying me, like you're waiting for me to slip. His eyes narrowed. You think I don't see it? Her pulse pounded. I'm just trying to understand you, that's all. Jason laughed bitterly, slamming the bottle onto the table so hard the glass cracked. Understand me? Nobody understands me. Not my family. Not the cops. Not the girls who left. But you. He leaned closer, eyes bloodshot. You could, if you'd stop lying. Her voice quivered. I'm not lying. Then prove it. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with bruising force. Tell me something real. Something nobody else knows. Pain radiated up her arm. Emily's mind raced. She had to give him something, anything, to appease him. I almost failed out of college, she blurted. I told everyone I was doing fine, but I wasn't. I felt like a fraud. Jason studied her, his grip loosening slightly. That true? Yes, she whispered. It's true. For a moment his face softened, almost boyish. Then, as quickly as it came, the softness vanished. He shoved her back, his eyes blazing. Doesn't matter. You're still hiding something. Emily's heart pounded in her ears. She had to find a way to turn this, to survive. But Jason was spiraling, unraveling before her eyes. He stalked into the living room and pulled open a drawer. When he returned, he held a handgun. The metal glinted in the dim light, and Emily's stomach dropped. You think you can leave me, he said, voice eerily calm now. Nobody leaves me. Her breath caught. Jason, please, shut up, he barked, raising the gun. His hand shook slightly, a tremor betraying the storm inside him. Do you know what it's like to be abandoned? To be treated like trash? To be laughed at? Emily forced herself to keep her voice steady. I'm not laughing at you. I don't want to leave. I came here for you. I want to be here. His chest heaved. The gun wavered between her and the floor. Sweat dripped down his temple. For a long moment, the room held its breath. Finally, he lowered the weapon, tossing it onto the couch with a frustrated growl. You're lucky, he muttered. You're not like the others. Not yet. Emily's body sagged with relief, though terror still coiled tight in her gut. She knew now, without doubt, that his instability was lethal. One wrong word could end her life. That night, as Jason passed out on the couch, the gun lying inches from his hand, Emily lay awake in the guest room, her mind whirling. She replayed every detail, the shack, the pit, the gun, and realized there was no more room for hesitation. If she didn't act soon, she wouldn't get another chance. Emily's body ached from another sleepless night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the gun in Jason's shaking hand, the pit yawning open in the woods, the photographs of other women laid out like trophies. Her instincts screamed at her if she didn't act soon, she'd become just another picture on that table. Jason snored on the couch, his arm dangling dangerously close to the pistol. Empty beer cans littered the floor around him, the bitter stench of alcohol clinging to the air. She crept past him into the kitchen, her heart pounding in her throat. Every floorboard felt like a gunshot beneath her feet. Her phone was useless without service. But maybe there was another way. She searched the drawers quietly, sifting through clutter until she found an old landline phone buried under cords. Hope flared, but when she lifted the receiver, all she heard was static. The line was dead. Her chest tightened. Of course. He'd cut it. The sound of movement made her freeze. Jason stirred, muttering in his sleep. She pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing, until his snores deepened again. Back in the guest room, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. She thought of her parents, of her best friend, of the simple life she'd left behind. How naive she'd been, chasing the fantasy of online love into this nightmare. Now she had only two choices: escape or die. She began cataloging everything she'd noticed. The farmhouse had two exits, the front door and the back, both creaky but unlocked. His truck keys stayed in his jeans pocket. His moods swung wildly with alcohol. He trusted her enough to let his guard down after drinking, and the gun always within reach. If she could distract him, if she could get her hands on it, maybe she could force him to drive her out. But even the thought made her stomach lurch. Could she actually pull the trigger if it came to that? A knock jolted her from her thoughts. The door creaked open, and Jason stood there, eyes bloodshot but awake. "Talking to yourself?" he asked, voice low. Her heart raced. "Just thinking." He stepped inside, scanning the room. His gaze landed on her suitcase. "You've been planning something." "No," she said quickly. "I just like having my stuff organized." He smirked. "Liar. You're always lying." He advanced, and she instinctively backed away. But instead of exploding, he sat on the bed beside her, his tone shifting. "You know, I could take care of you. Really take care of you. If you'd just stop fighting me." Emily forced a nod, every nerve screaming. "I know." His hand brushed against hers, and bile rose in her throat. "You'll see. We'll be good together, forever." Her lips trembled, but she whispered, "Yes." Jason smiled faintly, satisfied. "Good girl." He stood, stretched, and left the room. Emily waited until the sound of his footsteps faded. Then she pulled the blanket back and retrieved what she'd hidden. Beneath the mattress, the cordless handset from the dead phone. She couldn't call out with it, but maybe, just maybe, she could rig it to trigger noise, a distraction, something to buy her a few precious seconds. Her hands shook as she worked. Every creak of the house, a reminder that he could return at any moment. She didn't know if her plan would work, but she knew one thing for certain: she was done waiting for him to decide her fate. It was time to take control. The farmhouse felt like a coffin, every creak of the old wood echoing her dread. Emily sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee. Jason stood by the window, chain-smoking, his eyes scanning the empty fields as though he expected someone or something to appear. Her plan had to begin today. Waiting any longer meant risking the moment he finally snapped for good. "You're quiet again," Jason muttered, flicking ash into an overflowing tray. "I'm just tired," Emily said, keeping her tone flat, neutral. He turned and studied her, his eyes darting across her face as if decoding hidden meaning. Then, to her relief, he grabbed his truck keys. "Come on. Need supplies." Her pulse leaped. Supplies meant people. People meant a chance. The drive into town felt endless. Emily's eyes scanned every landmark, every sign, committing them to memory. If she had to run, she needed to know the path back. Jason, meanwhile, kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting possessively on the gun wedged between the seats at the store. He walked beside her, never more than an arm's length away. His presence loomed like a shadow, and she could feel the eyes of the cashier linger on them. Emily seized the moment. When Jason turned down an aisle, she ducked toward the counter, forcing a shaky smile. "Could I borrow your phone?" "Just for a second, my battery died." The cashier hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. Jason appeared instantly, his voice sharp as a blade. "She's fine. Don't bother her." The cashier froze, muttered an apology, and retreated. Jason's hand clamped down on Emily's shoulder. "Nice try," he hissed, his grip bruising. Her chest tightened as he steered her back to the truck, tossing the bags into the bed with violent force. Once inside, he slammed the door so hard the glass rattled. "You think I'm stupid," he growled, eyes blazing. "You think I don't see what you're doing?" Emily's voice trembled. "I wasn't shut up. His fist struck the dashboard, the sound like a gunshot. I warned you, Emily. Don't test me. The ride back was silent but heavy with his fury. Emily kept her gaze down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wanted to cry, to scream, but she forced herself to stay calm. When they reached the farmhouse, Jason shoved her inside and locked the door. You try something like that again, and I swear. He left the sentence unfinished, but the glint in his eyes said enough. Emily collapsed onto the couch once he disappeared into the bedroom. Her body shook with adrenaline and despair. She had tried and failed. Now he would be more cautious, more controlling, but something inside her hardened. The attempt hadn't worked, but it had taught her one thing. Jason wasn't invincible. His anger clouded him. His obsession blinded him. And somewhere in that chaos lay her chance. She looked toward the guest room, where the dismantled phone handset lay hidden under the mattress. She thought of the pit in the woods, the gun on the couch, the knives in the shack. Her entire world had shrunk into a prison of his making. But she would not die here. Her first attempt had failed. The next one could not. The farmhouse grew colder with every passing night. Emily barely ate, barely slept. Her mind worked endlessly, mapping possibilities, rehearsing scenarios. Jason had grown more paranoid since the grocery store, his moods snapping like brittle glass. He checked her phone daily, searched her suitcase, even locked the front door with a padlock when he went outside. But paranoia also made him careless. On the third night, after downing several beers, Jason left the handgun on the kitchen table. He staggered into the living room, collapsing across the couch, snoring within minutes. Emily sat frozen at the table, staring at the weapon. It glinted faintly in the lamplight, a silent promise of freedom, more death. Her pulse hammered in her ears as she reached out, fingers brushing the cold steel. Her mind screamed at her, "Take it now," but her hand trembled. Could she actually use it? Could she pull the trigger if it came to that? Jason stirred, muttering in his sleep, and Emily jerked her hand back. She couldn't risk waking him now. She needed a plan that didn't rely on chance. Her eyes darted to the dismantled phone handset hidden in her room. She thought of the faint static on the line. Maybe the connection wasn't completely dead. If she could rewire it, even briefly, she might get one desperate call out. She moved quickly, quietly, carrying the handset into the kitchen. Jason's snores rumbled from the couch. Emily's fingers worked frantically, twisting wires, her breath shallow. At last, the static softened into a faint, broken tone. Her heart leaped. She dialed -911. The line clicked. A faint voice answered, warbled through interference. 9-1. What's your... The connection died. Emily's heart sank. But before despair could swallow her, the phone rang back one piercing tone that shattered the silence. Jason bolted upright. What the hell was that? Emily panicked. She yanked the cord free, shoving the handset under the table. But Jason was already on his feet. His eyes blazed with suspicion as he stormed toward her. What did you do? He snarled. Nothing. He slapped the table, making her flinch. Don't lie to me. His hand closed around her arm, dragging her toward the couch. He shoved her down, his face inches from hers. You think you can call for help out here? Nobody's coming. Emily forced herself not to break, not to let fear consume her. She had to stall, to buy herself time. I wasn't trying to call anyone, she whispered. I swear. His grip tightened, his teeth. For a moment, she thought he might end it right there. But then his anger twisted into something worse, cold amusement. You're desperate, he said, almost chuckling. I like that. It means you know I own you. He shoved her back, grabbing the handgun off the table. He tucked it into his waistband and leaned close once more. One more stunt, Emily, and I'll put you in that pit tonight. Her body trembled, but her eyes hardened. For the first time, she didn't just feel fear, she felt fury. Fury at him, at herself, at the nightmare she'd let swallow her life. If she had one last chance, she would take it. And this time, she would not fail. The night pressed heavy against the farmhouse, the kind of silence that felt alive. Emily lay on the couch, her body still, her mind racing. Jason had finally passed out in his chair, beer bottles scattered around him. The gun balanced carelessly on the armrest. This was her moment. Her heart pounded as she slid silently to the floor. Every movement felt deafening in the quiet room. She crept toward the door, eyes fixed on the padlock. Jason's keys lay on the table, glinting faintly in the moonlight. She reached for them, her fingers brushing cold metal. When a floorboard groaned, Jason stirred. His eyes fluttered open, narrowing as he spotted her silhouette by the table. Emily. His voice was thick with sleep, but suspicion cut through. What are you doing? Her blood froze. She clutched the keys behind her back, forcing her voice calm. Just water. Jason rubbed his face, groaning. But then he saw the empty space on the table where the keys had been. His expression hardened. Put them back. Emily's pulse hammered. There was no time left. No more lies. No more waiting. She bolted. Jason roared, lunging from the chair. The gun clattered to the floor as he stumbled after her. Emily's fingers fumbled with the padlock, the keys slipping against sweat-slick hands. Behind her, heavy footsteps thundered closer. Don't you dare, Jason bellowed. The lock clicked open. Emily tore the door wide and sprinted into the night. The cold air hit her like freedom, but the sound of Jason's rage followed. Closer with every step. The fields stretched endlessly, the dirt road barely visible in the moonlight. Emily ran, lungs burning, legs screaming, but she didn't stop. Not when Jason's shouts grew nearer. Not when the gunshot cracked through the night and dirt exploded at her feet. You're mine, he screamed. Emily zigzagged through the field, the tall grass whipping her face. Another gunshot split the air. She stumbled, pain lancing her arm, but forced herself forward. Lights flickered in the distance. The road, a car, she screamed, raw and desperate. Help, please. Jason was almost on her, his shadow stretching over her as he raised the gun. It ends now. But headlights cut across the field, blinding them both. Tires screeched. A voice shouted, "Sheriff's Department." Drop it. Jason froze, his body coiled with rage. For a heartbeat, Emily thought he might fire anyway. Then 3 shots rang out, not his. Jason collapsed into the dirt, the gun slipping from his hand. Emily fell too, her body trembling, tears streaming down her blood-streaked face. The deputies swarmed around her, voices urgent but distant, as though underwater. She felt hands lifting her, wrapping her in a blanket, pulling her into safety at last. The sheriff's voice cut through the haze. You're safe now. It's over. Emily's eyes closed, exhaustion consuming her. For the first time in 14 hours, she allowed herself to believe it. She had survived the monster, but deep inside she knew the scars would never leave. Jason's shadow would haunt her forever.